12,000 years ago, before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, before the wheel, before agriculture, before any civilization we thought we understood, someone built something. Not a small something, not a pile of rocks arranged by chance or instinct. Something deliberate, something massive, something that should not exist. And for 30 years we have been staring at it, measuring it, debating it, and walking away more confused than when we arrived. Until now, the hill has a name. In Turkish, it means Potbelly Hill, a humble name for the most consequential archaeological discovery in human history, a name that gives no hint of the shattering, civilization-rewriting secret buried within its soil. But before we get to the secret, we need to go back to the beginning. To a shepherd, to a hill, and to the moment humanity stumbled onto something it was not quite ready to understand. It was 1994. A Kurdish shepherd named Savak Yildiz was guiding his flock across the dry ridgeline of southeastern Turkey, near the city of Şanlıurfa. He noticed something odd. Flat-topped limestone slabs jutting from the soil at strange angles, too regular, too deliberate to be natural. He reported what he had found, and that report made its way to a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt. Schmidt arrived at the site and immediately understood that he was not looking at random geological formation. He was looking at the top of something enormous, something engineered. He picked up a trowel. He began to dig. What emerged from the earth over the following years would force archaeologists, historians, and scientists to confront an uncomfortable truth. Everything we thought we knew about the timeline of human civilization might be catastrophically wrong. Göbekli Tepe is not one structure. It is a complex, a layered, organized, deliberately engineered complex of circular stone enclosures, each one anchored by towering T-shaped monolithic pillars. Some of these pillars stand nearly 6 meters tall. Some weigh over 15 tons. Every single surface is carved. Foxes, cranes, vultures, scorpions, headless human figures, abstract symbols, rendered with a skill and precision that takes your breath away. Carbon dating placed the site at approximately 11,500 years old. Some layers go deeper still, potentially 12,000 years old. For context, the Egyptian pyramids are roughly 4,500 years old. The agricultural revolution, the moment humans supposedly first began farming and settling, is conventionally dated to around 10,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe is older than all of it, and it was built, if we believe the conventional theory, by nomadic hunter-gatherers who did not yet have pottery, writing, the wheel, or metal tools. Now here's where the story begins to develop a very serious problem. The conventional explanation is straightforward. Roaming bands of prehistoric hunter-gatherers, equipped with little more than flint tools and animal skins assembled at this hilltop, somehow organized themselves into a massive coordinated workforce, and carved and erected these enormous stone pillars in precise geometric arrangements. They did this, the theory goes, as part of some kind of ritual or religious gathering. Then, and this is perhaps the strangest detail of all, they deliberately buried the entire site. Not ransacked, not abandoned, not destroyed. Buried. Carefully. Intentionally. As if they wanted to preserve it. It is a tidy story. It is also a story with engineering problems so large that they are difficult to ignore. Consider what it would take to build this site. The limestone pillars had to be quarried from bedrock at a site roughly a quarter of a kilometer away. This required not just labor, but knowledge. Knowledge of how stone fractures, how to separate a 15-ton block from the earth without splitting it, and how to shape it into a precise ta form with smooth, clean surfaces. Then the pillars had to be transported across uneven terrain using no wheeled vehicles, no draft animals that we know of, and no ropes made from anything stronger than plant fiber. Then they had to be erected, lifted vertically, and set into carved stone sockets with enough precision that they have remained standing for over 11,000 years. Then the surface of each pillar had to be carved in high relief. Not scratched, not painted. Carved. With images so detailed that individual feathers on bird wings are rendered individually, and so anatomically accurate that modern zoologists can identify species without any ambiguity. And the entire complex had to be planned in advance, because the geometric organization of the enclosures, the spacing, the orientation, the relationship between individual pillars, reflects a coherent architectural vision, not improvised effort. None of this is impossible with enough time and enough people, but it demands a level of planning, engineering knowledge, and organizational sophistication that fundamentally does not fit the description of nomadic hunter-gatherers using stone tools. The conventional explanation asks us to accept that people with no previous tradition of monumental construction suddenly produced, fully formed, one of the most architecturally ambitious structures the ancient world has ever seen. Archaeology calls this a mystery. A growing number of researchers call it an anomaly that deserves a different kind of investigation, and that is exactly what Grok AI was asked to perform. Grok is an artificial intelligence system developed by xAI. Unlike earlier AI models that operated primarily as text generators, Grok was designed to function as a cross-disciplinary analytical engine, capable of simultaneously processing vast datasets from entirely different fields of knowledge and identifying patterns across them. The human researchers working in disciplinary silos might never detect on their own. A team of researchers posed Grok a question that was, on its surface, deceptively simple. What are the carved symbols at Göbekli Tepe actually saying? What followed was an analysis of more than 30 years of accumulated data from the site. Excavation records, photographic surveys, three-dimensional laser scans of pillar surfaces, astronomical records, geological surveys of the surrounding region, paleoclimate data, comparative linguistics studies, and the full body of literature connecting the Göbekli Tepe site to other prehistoric sites across Eurasia. Grok processed all of it simultaneously, and it came back with something that no one expected. The symbols are not decorative, they are not random, they are not the artistic expression of superstitious minds projecting animal spirits onto stone. They are a writing system. This is where the analysis becomes remarkable. When Grok examined the carved symbols across multiple pillars and multiple enclosures, it identified something that linguists call syntactic regularity, the hallmark of a true communication system, rather than random artistic expression. Certain symbols consistently appeared in proximity to certain other symbols. Certain groupings repeated across geographically separated pillars. Certain symbols appeared at the top of pillar sequences, and others appeared at the bottom, suggesting a hierarchical structure analogous to how sentences are organized. The symbols were not random arrangements. They followed rules. Consistent, repeatable, learnable rules. Grok classified this as proto-writing, a precursor to the formal writing systems that would emerge thousands of years later in Mesopotamia and Egypt, but operating on the same fundamental principle: the use of standardized symbols to encode and transmit specific information. But here's where it gets extraordinary. Grok did not just identify the structure of a writing system, it identified the content. By cross-referencing the symbol sequences with astronomical data, specifically the positions of constellations as they would have appeared from the site of Göbekli Tepe across a range of dates spanning from 14,000 to 10,000 years before the Common Era, Grok found an unmistakable correlation. The symbols are a star map. More precisely, they are a dynamic star map, one that encodes not just the positions of specific constellations, but the movement of those constellations across precession cycles, the timing of solstices and equinoxes, the behavior of the moon across multi-year cycles, and the occurrence of specific astronomical events. The people who carved these pillars were not just watching the sky. They were documenting it. They were encoding it in stone so that the information would survive long after they were gone. The question, the urgent, pressing, deeply unsettling question, is why? What did they know that made them desperate enough to carve it permanently into 15-ton blocks of limestone? To understand the answer, you need to stand in front of Pillar 43. Among the dozens of pillars at Göbekli Tepe, Pillar 43, known informally as the Vulture Stone, is the one that has attracted the most sustained attention from researchers. And after Grok's analysis, it is now clear why. Pillar 43 is, in the most literal sense, a warning carved in stone. The pillar depicts a tableau of animals and symbols that, to the untrained eye, looks like a decorative scene. A vulture with wings raised, a scorpion, a headless human figure, a series of geometric shapes arranged in bands across the pillar's surface. Previous researchers had suggested it might represent a mythological narrative, a burial scene, a religious ceremony. Grok looked at it differently. Grok cross-referenced every element of the pillar. A 43 composition against astronomical records for the period between 11,000 and 10,500 years before the Common Era. What it found was not approximate or suggestive. It was precise. The vulture, the Crossid, positioned in the upper portion of the pillar with its wing pointing in a specific direction, corresponds to the constellation we now call Sagittarius. The scorpion corresponds to the constellation Scorpius. The circular disc near the vulture's wing corresponds to the position of the sun on a specific date. That specific date falls within the period of 10,900 to 10,800 years before the Common Era, the beginning of a catastrophic climate period known as the Younger Dryas. And what Grok found embedded in the geometry of those carvings, encoded in the angles and relationships between the animal symbols, was a record of something falling from the sky. The Younger Dryas was one of the most dramatic and rapid climate shifts in the geological record. Within the space of perhaps a decade, global temperatures plummeted, ice sheets advanced, ecosystems that had thrived for thousands of years collapsed. A significant portion of the large mammal species in North America went extinct. The sin. Effects were global and catastrophic. For years, scientists debated the cause. A major hypothesis that has gained substantial evidential support in recent decades is the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. The theory that a fragmenting comet or asteroid struck or exploded over the Earth's atmosphere, triggering wildfires, dust clouds, and the sudden climate disruption. Grok's analysis of Pillar 43 found that the astronomical tableau encoded in the carvings aligns precisely with the comet radiant point, the location in the sky from which a fragmented comet stream would appear to originate, for the specific date corresponding to the beginning of the Younger Dryas event. In other words, the people who carved Pillar 43 were not creating mythology. They were creating a record of something they had witnessed, something that had shattered their world. They were saying, "We saw it, we know where it came from, we know when it came, and we want you. Whoever you are, whenever you are, to know too." Once Grok established that Pillar 43 encoded a specific historical astronomical event, it returned to the larger dataset with a revised framework. If one pillar is a record of a specific event, what are the others recording? The answer, emerging from Grok's cross-disciplinary analysis, reframes everything we thought we understood about why Göbekli Tepe was built. Göbekli Tepe is not a temple, it is a library. The different enclosures at the site, labeled by archaeologists as enclosures A, B, C, D, and so on, are not variations on a single theme. They are separate chapters in a single organized body of knowledge. Grok's analysis found that different enclosures encode information from different categories. One enclosure's pillar symbols correlate most strongly with solar and seasonal astronomical data, essentially a calendar system of extraordinary precision. Another enclosure's symbols align most closely with geological and seismic data, encoding what appears to be a record of significant Earth events. A third enclosure appears to encode biological information, species distributions, migration patterns, ecological data that would have been vital knowledge for people navigating a rapidly changing post-catastrophe world. The entire complex, taken together, functions as what we might today call a knowledge repository, a physical, stone-encoded database designed to preserve critical information across time against the inevitable erosion of memory and the disruption of oral tradition. The builders understood something that modern archivists understand. If you want information to survive across thousands of years, you encode it in the most durable medium available. You organize it clearly, you repeat it redundantly, and you bury it, protect it, against the forces that would otherwise destroy it. The deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe, which for years struck archaeologists as one of its most puzzling features, now makes complete sense. They were not abandoning the site, they were sealing it, protecting it, entombing it in the same way we might protect a hard drive from an electromagnetic pulse. The soil became the archive's casing, the hill became its vault. And the warnings encoded inside, they were warnings about cycles, cosmic cycles. The message embedded across the pillars, as Grok reconstructed it, is not about one catastrophic event. It is about the periodicity of such events, the fact that the cosmos delivers disruption not randomly, but in cycles that can be tracked, predicted, and, if understood early enough, prepared for. Among all of Grok's findings, perhaps the most haunting is this one. When the artificial intelligence compared the earliest layers of construction at Göbekli Tepe to the later layers, it identified a disturbing pattern of degradation. The oldest enclosures, the deepest layers, closest to the time of the original builders, show the highest precision, the highest. Astronomical alignments are exact. The symbolic encoding is dense, complex, and internally consistent. The carvings demonstrate mastery of technique that implies long practice and deep tradition. The newer enclosures, built by what appear to be later generations of the same cultural tradition, show measurable decline. The alignments are slightly off. The symbol sequences become less internally consistent. The carving technique, while still impressive by any ordinary standard, lacks the same perfection. What this tells us is deeply sobering. The original builders of Göbekli Tepe were not inventing this knowledge. They were inheriting it. They were the last custodians of a tradition that was already ancient by their time. A tradition of astronomical observation, of knowledge preservation, of understanding the rhythmic violence of the cosmos. A tradition that stretched back into a period we have not yet recovered from the archaeological record, and they were losing it. Generation by generation, the full depth of understanding was slipping away. The inheritors could copy the forms, approximate the alignments, repeat the symbols. But the original meaning was fading, the way a photocopy of a photocopy loses resolution with each pass. Göbekli Tepe was, in this reading, not the beginning of something. It was the desperate final effort to save something that was ending. A civilization, or at least a body of civilizational knowledge, was dying, and these people were building a monument in stone because stone does not forget. So who built Göbekli Tepe? After 30 years of excavation and debate, after geological surveys and astronomical comparisons and linguistic analyses, Grok's synthesis offers an answer that is simultaneously more extraordinary and more logical than anything previously proposed. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were not simple nomads stumbling into accidental genius. They were the survivors, and the inheritors of a sophisticated intellectual tradition that understood the cosmos at a level we are only now beginning to appreciate. They understood precession. They understood comet cycles. They understood the relationship between sky events and earth events. They understood that civilizations are fragile and that knowledge, if not deliberately preserved, will be lost. They had watched their world be shattered. Not once, perhaps, but repeatedly across the long arc of human prehistory. And they had developed a practice, passed down through generations, of encoding what they knew in forms that would outlast the people who held that knowledge. They chose a hilltop in what is now southern Turkey. They quarried stone. They carved star maps into its surface. They built a library designed to endure not decades, not centuries, but millennia. And then they buried it. And for 11,000 years, it waited. What Grok AI has given us is not just a new answer to an old question, it has given us a new question. One far more significant and far more urgent. If the builders of Göbekli Tepe were inheritors of advanced knowledge, rather than its originators, where did that knowledge come from? What civilization preceded them? How old is the intellectual tradition they were struggling to preserve? And most pressingly, what exactly were they warning us about? The carvings on the pillars encode a message about cycles of cosmic catastrophe. The precision with which they recorded the Younger Dryas event, the care with which they organized their knowledge into an enduring stone archive, the desperation implicit in their deliberate burial of the entire complex. All of it speaks to people who knew, with terrible certainty, that what had happened once would happen again. They built Göbekli Tepe so that when it did, we would not be caught completely unprepared. Beneath a potbelly hill in southeastern Turkey, 11,000 years of silence have finally been broken. What we find on Thyssen, the other side of that silence is not the primitive past we imagined. It is something far more humbling, the evidence of minds as capable as our own, confronting questions as profound as any we face today, and choosing, with great determination and at great labor, to pass their answers forward to a future they knew they would never see. They spoke in stone. After 30 years of listening, we are finally beginning to hear them. The mystery of Göbekli Tepe is not solved, it is opened, and what lies inside is the possibility that human history is older, deeper, and far more remarkable than our textbooks have dared to suggest. Grok did not find a simple answer at the bottom of that data. It found a civilization hiding in the numbers, waiting to be found, waiting to be understood, and now we have no excuse not to listen.